let me know when the, oh, great. Stand by. Let me know when you're ready in the room there. I do see some people standing and chatting, and I don't know if we need to get started or not, but.
Sure. I think we're good to go. We can probably go ahead and kick things off if you want to gavel us in, and then I'll help us establish the quorum.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start our December 8th, 2021 Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments meeting. And our first order of business is to call this meeting to order, and I've just done that. And Andy, as usual, if I could ask you to establish a quorum.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, everybody. We'll start with who's in the room here this morning. So far, we have Councilmember Dave Donaldson's City of Colorado Springs, Councilmember Robert Zuluaga with Woodland Park, Mayor John Graham, Manitou Springs, Commissioner Dick Elsner, Park County. So we have those four in the room so far. On the Zoom, this is who I see tuned in so far. Commissioner Holly Williams, El Paso County. Welcome Tamara Estes, sitting in today for the City of Fountain as their alternate. Mayor Sharon Thompson had another engagement, another conflict. So welcome Councilmember Estes. We have Trustee Margaret Peterson, Green Mountain Falls. Councilmember Yolanda Avila, City of Colorado Springs, Commissioner Kemi Bremer, El Paso County, Commissioner Eric Stone, Teller County, and our chairman, Mr. Vanderwerf. So back to you, Stan.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Commissioner Bremer, I know, is online. Called me before the meeting, just let me know and to share with the team here. She's online, not in a non-video status, and we'll switch to video status here in a few minutes. So we do have a quorum, and let's just maybe go around the room and see if we have any introductions for new folks or visitors today. Do we have anybody, Andy, in the room?
No new faces in the room.
Okay. And I don't know that I see anybody new that's online. But you can maybe check for me as well and make sure I'm not missing somebody.
Yeah, just our alternate Councilmember Tamara Estes from the City of Fountain, sitting in for Sharon today. Very
good. Thank you. All right, let's move on to item number 2 then, agenda approval. The agenda is in the board packet. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to review it, and I'll entertain a motion to approve that agenda.
Move to approve. This is Dick Elsner.
Second, John Graham.
Thank you, Dick and John, and thank you for mentioning your names. That's awesome. Are there any comments or questions with regard to the agenda? And hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 And are there any opposed? All right, very good. The agenda is approved for this morning. Proceeding forward, we have item number 3, our public comments and presentations. And we have one item on there, our Communities Working Together Award. So bear with me a little bit. I'm going to read a package about this, but many of you will know what this is. But as you all know, our theme at PPACG is about communities working together. And last year we did start a new tradition where the board recognizes an individual in the region that promotes that theme, has also demonstrated leadership, and has demonstrated an ability to work across jurisdictional boundaries. And we certainly have that in PPACG. So our former Woodland Park Mayor, Neil Levy, who passed away last year, exemplified that. He was the first awardee, and we created this award in his name. I'm sorry, and then last year, my apologies, last year, our first ever Communities Working Together Regional Award, and I made a mistake earlier, it's in Neil's name, but the first awardee went last year, excuse me, to Teller County Commissioner and PPACG board member Norm Steen. So this year, I was joined by board members Nancy Henjum and John Graham in reviewing several nominations. You all may be aware they can be nominations from our board, nominations from the PPACG team, and also nominations from anybody in the community. And ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to announce our 2021 Communities Working Together Award recipient is Dick Elsner, Park County Commissioner. And his accomplishments are numerous. The application for him demonstrated an enormous number of great things that he's done over many years. But to name a few of those, he was instrumental in creating a health services district in Park County in order to bring needed medical services to the area. He's been working with multiple counties and the state on affordable housing solutions. He's active in representing the Central Front Range region on the STAT committee. He's championed the effort to provide transportation service between Park and Summit counties and to help address workforce commuting needs. And in his spare time, he's been working with the legislature's task force regarding tax policy, but there are many more. So congratulations to Dick. The selection committee feel very strongly that this is a well-deserved award for Dick. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate you personally and give you the floor to say a few words if you would like to do so.
Well, you never give a commissioner a chance to say a few words. One, thank you very much. This is kind of a total surprise. And a lot of the things that I do and that I'm on, the only reason that I actually can do those things is because of the support of everybody else. PPACG has been amazing in what they're trying to do in their outreach in our region. And again, I think it was Isaac Newton that said something about standing on the shoulders of giants. And that's kind of the way I feel that, when you become a commissioner, you look around at everybody else and the municipalities and everybody else that works really hard. And you kind of look at that and say, wow, if I can take where they are now and build more, it's going to become a much better place. And that's kind of what I strive for. And looking around, I think that's about what everybody here strives for, is trying to figure out how to make things better. So again, thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Dick. Could we give Dick a round of applause?
Mr. Chair, if I can make a comment, this is John Graham.
Yes, sir, please proceed.
As part of the review committee, we had several candidates, all attractive candidates. Certainly, Dick is very well qualified for the reasons that the chair pointed out. I guess the temptation may be that the award is not
I got one more
together,
thing.
but
Tina
getting
made a
things
good
done.
John, if you could hold on just for a second. We have somebody whose mic is hot out there. If you could mute, please. Okay, I think that's taken care of. I'm sorry, John, please continue.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Well, I was going to say, the committee we had several attractive candidates. Certainly, I think we felt that Dick was probably the most deserving for the breadth and depth of his experience. This is not like communities working together; it's people working together and people getting things done. So, Dick, thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Great comments, and appreciate your statements about the other very qualified candidates that we also reviewed. Any other comments for Dick at this point from any of the board members? All right, hearing none. Once again, Dick, congratulations. I'll tell you, it's been a pleasure working with you over the last several years, and I'm looking forward to continuing to do that and doing great things in service to our communities. All right, thank you, sir. All right, let's move on to the consent items. And there are 3 on those. This is number 4 on the agenda. So the first one is approval of the minutes from the November 10, 2021 regular meeting. The second one is the summary of financials. And the third is the annual evaluation of the executive director. I'll just make a few quick points on item 4C. I appreciate the direction given by the board last week to create a small group to discuss a couple of choices And that was Sharon Thompson, Dick Elsner, and myself. We came up with a recommendation, and then I called every board member that I could get a hold of and asked if that would be found acceptable. I believe I had universal approval on that. So the formal outcome of that is listed in the packet, and you can see it under item 4C. And I just wanted the board to know that we did follow through with your direction from last month's meeting. With that in mind, I'll entertain a motion at this point for the three items on item 4.
Move acceptance of the consent calendar. John Graham.
Robert Zuluaga, second.
Thank you, John and Robert. I appreciate that. Are there any comments or questions on any of these items from any of the board members? Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and proceed with a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, none opposed. Thank you very much. And I'll just finish with a quick comment. Andy, I just want to, on behalf of the board and also myself, can express our appreciation of the really outstanding work you're doing. Of course, it's not you, it's also the whole team, but that team does great work when they have a good leader, a great leader, and you are delivering that for us, and we are deeply appreciative of that. You will find that expression of that appreciation in the evaluation letter. So thank you very much for all the great work that you're doing. All right.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and members of the board, and look forward to another really outstanding, productive year next year. Thank you.
You are very welcome. I guess I'll open up the floor if anybody has other comments regarding any of those consent items now that we're completed with the voting. All right, thank you. Let's move on now to item number 5. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Hello?
please go ahead, Yolanda.
I just wanted to go on record that I was very reluctant. I think that our director has just been outstanding and over the top. And so thank you for all the great work. Andy, you've turned PPACG around like you did a 180. And we are now respected throughout the community, the state, and every board member here, I'm sure, and your staff. So I just want you to know that I wholeheartedly feel that you've just done an outstanding job. So thank you for all that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Councilwoman Avila, for your great comments. And I think we all feel exactly the same. Any other comments before we move on? All right, thank you, everybody. Let's move on to item number 5. And the very first one is item 5A, fiscal year 2023-2027 tip update draft with public comments and public hearing. Andy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're going to turn this over to Danelle Miller. She's going to handle our tip, and this is a public hearing item as well. So with that, Danelle.
Yes, today is the date for our public hearing for the PPACG review of the draft FY 2023 through 27 Transportation Improvements Program with planned approval in January. And so our recommendation to the board is to open the public hearing to receive any public comments here today.
Very good. I am ready to do that. Before I do so, Andy, do we have any other administrative things we need to address before we open this meeting for public comments?
I don't believe so. I think you're good to go. We don't see anybody in our conference room that's raring to speak. Is that correct, John, Jessica? But yes, I think we're fine if you want to open up the hearing officially.
Okay, so I'll do that. So I'm officially opening up our meeting here for public comments on this topic, the tip update draft. And obviously the appropriate question for me to ask is if there's anyone in the audience that wishes to provide a comment on this topic from the public. If I heard correctly, Andy, you don't see anybody in the audience there. Is that true?
Unless our staff members want to get up and speak, which I don't think that'll happen. So
Okay, very
nobody
good.
here. Yep.
Is there anybody online that wishes to speak on this topic from the public? All right, I'm not hearing anybody chiming in there as well. So at this point, I think we will close our meeting for public comment on the TIP update draft. And if you could maybe explain what our next steps forward will be from this point.
Absolutely. So just so you're aware, there was a 30-day comment period, which ended November 12th. We did hold two public comment open houses, one virtual on October 5th or October 25th, and a hybrid open house was held on November 4th. Announcements, of course, were made via the website and social media, the newspaper, etc. We received no other public comments. So our next steps will be to send this tip through the CAC or the TAC and the CAC for adoption, and then we will bring it back to the board in January.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments from any members of the board? I've got one comment. I'll hold it in reserve. Okay, hearing none.
I'm sorry, there's a quick, just a comment in the room, Councilmember Zuluaga. There should be a draft in the overall packet. Is that correct?
And if so, could you
Or
tell
if
me
not-
what page it's on? Oh, it's a link.
Okay. And I can share my copy. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I've seen all the financials before it, so. Okay. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Since we do have the draft up on the screen, if any of the board members have questions at this point, if there's something in there that you've noticed and you'd like to ask a question and get it answered at this point, we can do that as well. All right, hearing none. Mr. Zulaga, did you, since you asked for the copy of it, did you have a question at this point?
Sorry. I was just trying to look at what the projects were and I didn't see them initially, so I'm just scanning them now.
Okay, we'll stand by for that. I'll go ahead and I'll make my comment and then give you an opportunity in a moment. You know, when we, it's great that we open these things up for public comment. We're getting pretty limited inputs from the public, Andy. And I don't know if that's a reflection of you doing great work, which probably it has to be at least in part. But, you know, it's maybe worthwhile for us to have a conversation about, you know, what else could we do to encourage the public to review it? Because in the end, it's their document. But I don't know, Andy, if you'd like to offer comments or suggestions on that, or maybe think it over and maybe come back to the board about that.
Just a couple of quick observations initially, and then if Danelle, John have other suggestions, it may look to them as well. I know we held an in-person session here that we tried to widely advertise. We held an online session as well. But we also, there's a lot of engagement with our local jurisdictional staff at the TAC level. They're the ones that generate the projects that end up in the TIP as well. We also take it to our Community Advisory Committee or the CAC. So we do a lot of committee, touch bases and feedback and engagement as we put this together. But that said, we also try to cast a wider net and let the public know that it's open for public comment. I think I read a notice about it in the Colorado Springs Business Journal and some other local publications. But it's hard to get people to turn out if unless they see something somewhat controversial that might be showing up on a project list. And I think this is more kind of taking care of the meat and potatoes of projects that may get funded over the next 4 years. So nothing all that inflammatory, I guess. But observations, Danelle, John?
Mr. Chair, members of the board. And I think we also have to keep in mind that typically we do a TIP every other year. this to sync our development cycle up with the state. We actually did one tip and then we turned right around and we did the next one. So there's very little that's sort of new to this tip versus other sorts of things. Mostly funding or predicting additional funding for existing projects. So not a huge sort of change that we would see in a normal sort of tip cycle. So it's a little bit of a different animal this particular time versus normal. So I think that's one of the main reasons. But that being said, Mr. Chair, you're absolutely right. It's kind of difficult, and sometimes I get a little like take a little personal, like no one cares what I'm doing. But it's quite frankly, it is something that again we try our best to make sure that everybody knows the importance of the document, how it's actually producing real projects on the street, providing real funding for it. But that being said, it is one of those things that it's very difficult to get the overall public engaged in the process. And we will continue to work on that over time.
Thank you, John. You know, what I appreciate the comments that you all just made here in the last few minutes is the extensive interface with, you know, the member governments and several committees. That certainly is a key component of getting a good, proper review here. And all of those committees and the member governments represent citizens as well. So that's great that we have such an extensive engagement at that level. So I appreciate being reminded of that. All right, very good. Are there any other comments then with regard to item 5A or questions?
Mr. Chair, no questions. I just appreciate seeing the document and recognizing as a new board member that this process is something that happens every other year. And it's helpful to see, particularly after our work session last week, just some of the, now we're moving down to the depth of it and it's helpful. So next year I'll be on board with it. I mean, 2 years from now.
And Mr. Chair, if I might, if you do have any questions, again, this is just the information round. We will bring it back next month for adoption. So if you have any questions in between time as you're looking through things, feel free to contact us and we're happy to chat about why things were done the way they were, why certain projects were chosen. So happy to do that. And again, you do have another bite at the apple, so to speak.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chair, this is City Councilman Dave Donaldson. And my only question for John would be, is there anything in particular in here, John, that you want to point out or ask us to take a look at before it comes back?
Wow. Like I said, this was a small sort of incremental change because again, normally what we have done is a 4-year tip, and we've added the 5th year, and we basically did one at the beginning of this year, which that was sort of our normal tip. And then we added this one on here to sort of add that 5th year. So I will freely admit, I think you've sort of stumped me. I don't want to say, no, everything's fine. And then like 15 minutes later, I'm like, oh, darn, I should have mentioned this. But nothing comes to mind. It seemed pretty incremental. I will say that CDOT Region 2 staff, especially Wendy Pettit, has been very helpful, giving us all these numbers and helping us with the CDOT projects. So Wendy, if I could put you on the spot, since you've been instrumental in helping us put this document together, does any project jump out at you that we want to make sure we mention, or anybody else on the TAC committee that might be on the call?
I don't think so. I think it's just a normal program, and like John said, I don't see anything controversial at this point. I mean, we'll have discussions as time moves on here with the 260 process and priorities for the region, but that is a conversation that'll happen after the holidays. But other than that, this is just business as usual.
And one thing I'll mention too, Wendy kind of reminded me that this is all based on what's in your adopted long-range plan already. That goes out to the year 2045. So we've got to make sure there's internal consistency there. So the jurisdictions are just putting forward projects to be funded in the TIP that are already basically blessed from a planning standpoint. CDOT's got a process they go through as well, where they update their 10-year priority list. And I think that's going to come to the board soon in the next couple of months to update that. So again, that the tip is a way to implement our priority projects that the board has already basically blessed. So we're making sure that there's always alignment with our plans and then the funding documents like the tip.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. On this particular item then on 5A, any more questions or comments? And if I could just, if you could refresh my memory, we're not voting on this today. The action part was to open for public comment, correct? Okay, great, thank you. I see head nods.
That's
All
correct.
right, I think, yeah, I'm not hearing any other questions from the board. So let's go ahead and proceed now then to 5B. Thank you, team, for the great work you're doing on the tip. 5B is the 2022 budget, and take it away.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Jess, if you can pull up the slides, starting with the one slide about grant information. As we talked at length at the November meeting, and then also had a really good discussion again at the board workshop, expanded workshop this past Friday. We've got the draft budget in front of you for adoption today. It does have to be adopted by the end of the year. Otherwise, we can't bill against our grants that we get to fund our organization. I'm just going to go through a couple of the slides that Casey went through Friday, and I'm going to just touch on these very, very briefly. But as a reminder, for FY 2022, our budgeted revenues are just over 15 million. 92% of that comes from our grants, just over 14 million. We have 20 grants that we're expecting that'll be executed and used throughout the 2022 fiscal year. And just by comparison, I was curious after our discussion this past Friday, how many grants and what the grant funding was just a couple of years ago, and looked at a pre-COVID year. For 2019, we had $8 million in grants and 13 total grants that we were administering. So it's really, as we talked about Friday, it's grown a lot. Our staff haven't grown proportionally, and we've got a slide that kind of gets to that here in just a minute, but yeah, just the amount of grant volume that we're managing in our programs is really, really taken off. Matches required for our grants from our local dues and in-kind contributions as well, and that's about 710,000. Next slide. Personnel costs, we're projecting 39 FTEs for 2022. That's an increase of 1.25 over the 2021 fiscal year. Total personnel costs, as you can see, they're about 26% of our budget, just under $4 million. We'll circle back to this in a moment, but we have 3 scenarios that are provided for a merit-based salary pool increase for 2022. And then our FTEs by department are broken out. We have 8 personnel and admin, 18 in the AAA, 2 in our military planning program, 1 in environmental, 8, I think that says, in transportation, and 2 in the PPRTA. The next slide, I think, shows a breakdown of where our staff members are on the top chart is in salary quartiles within their current range for their position. The bottom chart shows 15 staff members are in the first quartile. The one just above that in purple shows 17 staff members are in the second quartile. So that's what, 32 total. So about 84% are below the midpoint within their current pay ranges. And then you see the number that are in the third quartile, then the fourth quartile of their pay ranges. The bottom chart just shows longevity of staff. How many, I think the bottom fuchsia color is open. So we have 5 openings, currently open positions. The next one above that in purple is we have 7 staff members that have been here less than a year. The one above that shows 13 staff members that have been here between 1 and 5 years. And then above that are the ones that have been here longer, 5 to 10 years, 10 to 15, and greater than 15, which was 4. Next slide. We talked about this a bit on Friday at the workshop, but this shows just over the past couple of fiscal years, our personnel expenses as a total of the total of our budget as a percent of our total budget. It was 40% in the year 2018, I believe. and has dropped down, projecting for 2022 that it'll be 26% of our total budgeted expenses. So we feel it's a good indication showing that we're being more efficient with the grants, the volume of grants that we're administering on behalf of the region, while staff expenses and FTEs have not grown tremendously. They've grown a little bit incrementally, but certainly haven't grown at the pace of our grants that we've taken on. And then the next slide, final slide, I believe, shows the 3 scenarios for a merit-based salary pool increase that we talked about Friday. The top one shows the original proposal that we brought forward in the draft budget at 5.4%. It's merit-based, based on an individual's evaluation at the end of the year coming up here in the next several weeks. It's not based on cost of living increase. It's all merit-based. And we did find in doing some additional research that it's generally sort of in alignment with where the city of Colorado Springs is as well. I think they have a 3% cost of living increase and a 0 to 5% merit increase projected for 2022. The next one was an option scenario that was discussed by the board last month, 4.4%. So we brought that forward as well. And you can see that would save about $31,000 from the 5.4% salary pool increase. And then the bottom one is one that I brought forward following a good discussion that the chair and I had a couple of weeks ago. Thought there's maybe a better way to kind of achieve some broader support across the entire board. So suggested or brought forward as a scenario of 4.25% increase as well, which is a little bit higher, but generally in alignment with the El Paso County cost of living and market adjustments that they're looking at for 2022. So I'll stop talking. As we talked about Friday, Casey Partridge, our finance manager, was out this week. So we were hoping, I think we got a lot of questions answered last Friday, but I will do my best to try to answer any other questions you may have, or may use my one phone call to call Casey as a lifeline if needed. Right. Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair, you're on mute.
Oh yeah, my apologies. That does happen from time to time. Thank you, Andy, for your presentation of this. And before we get started into a discussion about it, I just want to express my appreciation to the board for a great conversation and discussion about the 2022 PPACG budget that took place in the workshop last week. I think we went through most of the conversation that we need to go through on this, and certainly going to open up the floor for any comments from any board member, but I'll offer a proposed pathway, if you will. And that would be, when I ask for a motion to make a motion about approving or modifying the budget on other topics other than what's on the screen right now, but then also include in that motion one of these 3 choices, the 5.4, 4.4, 4.25. And then if we get a second, that will then become a valid motion. And then I will ask the board if there are any amendments to that motion, and then we'll have a conversation about those amendments, possibly vote on the amendment first to see if that passes or fails, and then act accordingly as a result of that vote, and then go back to the main motion. So that, I think, is our pathway forward. So with that in mind, open up the floor for any comments or questions from any of the board members.
This is Dick Elsner. Looking at the budget and with all of the discussions we had, the motion I would make is to approve the budget with the 5.4%. If you take a look at the additional work the staff has been doing, the fact that they're a lot more efficient, covering a lot more work, I think the 5.4% would reflect our appreciation of the staff and a reward for their extremely hard work dealing with more money and more grants, because I think you do an excellent job. So my motion is to accept the budget as proposed and at a 5.4% for staff.
And this is Dave Donaldson.
County would second.
If
I
I
agree.
Yeah, if I heard that correctly, Mr. Stone seconded, but I also think Mr. Donaldson, if I heard right, was also getting ready to second. Is that accurate?
Yep, that's accurate.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stone, I think you were a split second before Mr. Donaldson, so we'll accept your second for this. And I'll just ask the question with Dave, with what you were going to propose, which I believe was a second. Did you have any qualifying comments on that second or not?
Mr. Chair, I was simply going to second it.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so we have a motion and a second for the 2022 budget. And what I'd like to do at this point is open the floor to see if anybody has an interest in offering an amendment to that motion. All right,
I
hearing
see,
none.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Williams has her hand up, I think.
Oh, my apologies. Thank you. I don't see who's on the screen, so I'm sorry that I didn't catch that. And Andy, if you could just continue to help me with that. Commissioner Williams.
I am in support of the motion because, you know, a lot of this is merit pay increases. I think that's very important. And so I just wanted to say I'm in support of the motion. I'll keep it short.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it. Any other comments or opportunities for an amendment to the motion?
Robert Zuluaga, Woodland Park.
Yes, Robert, go ahead.
I want to speak in support of a motion after our work session on Friday. It became clear to me that the 5.4% is uncomfortable for me in terms of an escalator to our region, but it's very comfortable for me in terms of the efficiencies that staff has established, and that it's not based on cost of living increases as much as on merit. And so that has won my support.
Great. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your comments. Any other comments or questions? And one last opportunity for an amendment to the motion, but I think we might be there already. All right, hearing none, let's I guess I'll just open the floor one more time. We have no amendments, so we have a motion and a second, and that's what we will vote on at this point. Are there any other questions either on the personnel costs or salary pool, but frankly also to be open about any other part of the budget as well, which is also very important? All great. Okay, great. Hearing none, let us go ahead and proceed with the vote. All those in favor of the current motion and second, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, there are no opposed. The budget 2022 PPACG budget passes. I will make the point, it was a great discussion at the workshop. I thought the workshop did us a great service to get through a lot of the conversation at that time. And I hope that we hold more workshops in the future as well, because that was a great place to have those conversations brought into detail.
Yes,
All right,
thank you, Mr. Chair. We will, and thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you, Andy. Great job. Let us move on to item 5C, 2022 work program.
Good morning, board members. Jessica McMullen, your Policy and Communication Manager. Every year, PPACG staff review all of our programs, our strategic plan, and compiles them into the board's consideration for a work program. We use this to align with our budget to make sure we're saying, here's what we're going to do, and here's what we're asking you to give us money for. The document helps PPACG to support intergovernmental cooperation and coordination of regional issues. And the work program really describes the activities we're going to do. Our strategic plan tells us where you want us to be in the end. Our work program tells you how we're planning to get there for you. In the 2021 program, we called out a list of priorities that we wanted to accomplish. We were pretty ambitious. We did a great job. Some of the highlights of that work in 2021, we brought on the Commission on Aging, making it regional rather than housed within the city of Colorado Springs. We did ongoing support for our seniors and our partners during the COVID pandemic. There was a lot of great work done, and a lot of our board members were involved in that as well. We brought on Drive Smart Colorado, making sure that this organization, a great nonprofit, didn't go away. They do a lot of great work throughout the state and really benefit our community. We began the Tri-County Transportation Study. This is going to help make sure that the MPO and the TPR are no longer sitting at spots where they don't know what the other one is doing. As you guys all know, it gets a little weird where you see that there's a city limit or a county limit or a weird line in the sand that nobody knows why that's what one ends and the other begins. So that Tri-County study is going to be doing some great things. Beginning the wildfire mitigation efforts with the compatible use study, the old JLUS study. That work is really going to show showed a lot of what we did in 2021, but is also going to show strongly in 2022. The development of the air quality strategies under the Ozone Advanced program that you all approved in January. Even though we did lose our environmental planner, we did a lot of education and we did a lot of work with the members of the AQTC and partners to see what's already happening for air quality to make sure we're staying well together. And we provided significant feedback and insight into both the employer trip reduction program that the AQCC was looking at and the greenhouse gas emissions proposed regulations that have been going on through CDOT. So our action request today is to move to approve that 2022 work program. Does anyone have any questions about what we did or what that work program says we'd like to do?
Yes, thank you. Can you just give like a couple of sentences on the Drive Smart and just kind of enlighten me a little? I'm not quite sure exactly what all is entailed in that.
Okay, so Drive Smart is a nonprofit designed to help provide education on transportation safety. They do this through a variety of different ways, but their executive director was ready to retire. So the nonprofit was no longer going to be able to continue their work. We took that on and have been using it for traffic safety campaigns. You would have heard about that earlier this year when we reported about what we did. And we're really helping to raise awareness and try to help make driving safer. And that's what Drive Smart's initial goal was. So we brought that on because it aligned perfectly with our transportation goals of let's make our transportation system safer. And Drive Smart's focus was on the driver's side rather than the planning side.
That's great. And just maybe for an offline conversation, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that program, what's happening, how it's connecting with other elements.
That brilliant man right there is the one who will be able to assist you with more
Awesome.
information.
Yeah.
Wait, why are you putting Paul? Oh, wait.
And it's a really good question and observation. And we actually blended our board together with the previous Drive Smart
Okay.
board, which included a lot of
Yeah.
law enforcement folks and others on the enforcement side
Yeah.
of traffic safety. So we're kind of providing some support as an umbrella organization for this separate nonprofit. So we're helping
Yeah.
to foster and move it along. We actually need another board member from the PPACG board.
Okay, I'm not looking for more work, but
Okay, I thought I'd throw a pitch as well. Councilmember Donaldson and I think Mayor Sharon Thompson are our two
oh,
current reps from the PPACG board on Drive Smart. They've got a board meeting this coming Friday. But we need a third.
Oh.
Councilmember Avila had to step back.
it
so
needs
just-
to be someone from this board.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
So,
Okay, great.
We were actually going to shake down Commissioner Elsner, see if he was interested, but yeah, anybody. But we'll do that during the annual meeting next month. We'll find that third
Okay.
person. So we don't need that right now. But I will say that again, we just sent out the invitation and the agenda for the Drive Smart Colorado board meeting. That's this Friday from 1:30 to 3. We will forward it, if that's okay with you, Andy, to everybody on the board. So even though you may not be a board member, if you're just interested, you can just tune in on the Zoom and watch and listen and hear what happens.
Thank you very much.
All right, very good.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, please.
Robert Zulawaga, Woodland Park.
Yes, Mr. Zulaga, go ahead.
Jessica, could you speak a little bit about the Tri-County Transportation Study? I know we're having it happening on Friday up in Teller County, and I'm just wanting to get a bit of clear framework of what you're looking for and what we can expect.
John.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Councilmember Zulaga. The Tri-County study came out of actually the initial strategic plan. And I think the way things had been done here in the past was pretty much the transportation folks focused on the NPO area, which is the urbanized area, basically the core of Colorado Springs, with the little saguaro arm that goes up to Woodland Park. And there wasn't really a focus on anything outside of that NPO area. What we heard during the strategic plan is, hey, we have needs too, and we want to talk about the connectivity beyond what just CDOT does for their long-range planning efforts for the highways. So we took that out of the strategic plan and we went to go find funding for it. This became a very difficult process, but again, big thank you to Wendy Pendit and CDOT Region 2, Rich and others. They helped us find the funding with the Multimodal Options Fund, and the Transportation Alternatives kind of blend helps fund that study. Now, like I said, it took us about 2 years to get the funds together and finally get rolling. But now we're rolling forward, and the idea is that we're trying to look beyond or below the connectivity at that state level. CDOT does a great job at that state level making connections. But how do we connect below that level? How do we make sure that principal arterials connect? How do we make sure that we have a regional transit connections that make sense on our own, and what we do internally below that state system? How do we make sure that we have some independence beyond what the state provides? So the study just kicked off about a couple weeks ago. Commissioner Elsner, if I could ask you to jump in, since you guys had yours on Monday, I believe.
I'd be more than happy to. We had our meeting on Monday, and basically the consultants are there with some PPACG people, and they invite members of the community to come in to just talk about issues around transportation. It's designed to do local issues, not state highways. And it took us about 10 minutes to convince everybody in the room that this isn't state highways. This is, in our case, we're talking Park County roads, Park County needs that are separate from what CDOT provides. We have roads to a couple of, one 11-mile reservoir, which is a state park, and we'll have over 600,000 people on a county road that we have trouble maintaining. So it's trying to develop a study that identifies these issues and highlights them, and then hopefully will give us something we then can turn around and go to. In our case, we hope to hit CPW and say, look, you need to help us. We want you to charge a surcharge at the park so we can have some money for our roads. We've got some roads that connect 285 and Highway 24 that are county roads that suddenly become semi lanes when 285 is closed. So it's kind of identify that, and then also on the multimodal side, what type of bus service, what other issues can we bring up that would help people get around Park County that the state does not, they are not responsible for. And it was a lot of fun.
We like to be fun.
So when you have the findings of this study, then does that go back to the state, or is that just something we do internally for our own appropriation of priorities and funds?
Right. It's an internal thing. It's our study. So it'll come back to this board for you to review and accept. You're not going to adopt anything, because adopting would mean that you're going to force something to happen. And again, us being a regional organization, we're not going to try to attempt to set policy or anything else for any of our local jurisdictions. So this is something that helps. So from your perspective, the things that you will get out of it will be things like project lists that you can take into the different processes and grant applications. You will get policy implications. Commissioner Elsner mentioned the state parks and how there's no funding to get roads there. There's a program called Federal Lands Access Program, or FLAP. So you can use that FLAP program to go out and get money for that, but you have to be a federal park. So maybe one of our policy recommendations is work with the state legislature to create and fund a state lands access program, or SLAP. We might need to work on that. Maybe SLAP's not what we want to call it, but we have to figure, there would be that sort of recommendations that, again, we're not dictating to the jurisdictions what to do, but rather we've listened to you. We've taken all the information, put it in a report and recommendations. And then as your individual jurisdictions feel comfortable, we would then move forward to try to make those things happen.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for the comments and questions, everybody. I would just like to point to the major projects listed for 2022. Hopefully the board has properly gone through those, or has gone through those. I'll highlight just a few. Explore the new federal transportation bill for enhanced regional opportunities. Begin work on the 2050 transportation plan. Coordinate with the city, county, and Peterson Space Force Base and other partners for safe access through the Peterson North Gate. By the way, I do have one change there under the military planning program, second bullet. It is Peterson Space Force Base, not station. Just a minor little nit. And then continuing on, under the other section, there's a robust list of working on improving regional cooperation, both with our own members, but also expanding beyond that. I think these are great goals for 2022. I do want to ask the board if you feel there is something we ought to add to these goals or have a conversation about. So let me offer that question up for everybody at this point.
So this is Councilwoman Henjum. I said more like, what should we take away? And this is a huge work plan. I mean, it's very ambitious and all important stuff. A little less tongue in cheek, honestly, sometimes you do have to say, are we doing too much? I don't have anything proposed to take away, but sometimes you do have to be, in order to be more effective, you have to do a little less. I don't know if you have any comments on that, Andy.
I worry about that as well. It's a great comment, great observation. I want to make sure we're not overextending ourselves, but a lot of these are going to be partnering with other entities in the region, such as the new things we listed under other. We talked about possibly doing a regional forum, regional assembly next year. That's not just going to be us, but working with other partners and our local jurisdictions to try to pull things like that off. So what we'll do is we're going to report back on a regular basis. I think we come back with quarterly reports on how we're doing on our strategic plan implementation, and we can keep addressing these priority projects for you and let you know, hey, these are working, or maybe we did bite off a little bit more than we can chew. But for now, I feel okay with this list and being able to make pretty good progress next year.
Good. Well, I think it would be great to keep us apprised of if you feel like you've bitten off more than you could chew, and if we needed any more affirmation for the 5.4 increase. I think this helps that as well. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments. It is a big list, and of course, as you continue through, you look at the goals for area agency on aging and continuing through, and the list is really huge. There's a lot there. I think many of what's on here, though, is a continuation or a modification to enhance somehow or some way a whole series of activities that have already been ongoing. So maybe, Andy, if I could ask you the question, if there's one or two things you'd like to point out on this list that maybe are heavy lifts and aspirational, and maybe you would consider them to be very important as well. You might have an item or two you really want to highlight.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm scanning the list now. The number one priority that we list under, and they're not in order of priority, but the first one we have listed under the AAA, advocate for housing needs of the elder community across the region and make it a priority in all of our service areas. You know, that's become a relatively new initiative, if you will, and it's become a legislative priority for 2022. We're going to talk about that in just a second. And again, it's not us taking this on alone, but there are a lot of conversations around affordable and attainable housing across the entire region. Our focus is narrowly focused on the 60 and over, the elderly population. So that's one that is relatively new where we're going to need some help. But again, that's a community approach to trying to crack that nut. But a good observation, Mr. Chair, that a lot of these are ongoing initiatives and they're maybe expanding in some ways. The first bullet listed under transportation planning, by this time next month, we'll know what the new greenhouse gas emission rules are for transportation planning. That's going to be a big undertaking, having to comply with the compliance and reporting associated with the new rule, and then trying to figure out how do we develop collectively a transportation plan that complies with those rules, or how do we engage with mitigation projects that are going to help us get under the wire. That's going to be another big deal. The federal transportation infrastructure bill that's out there that provides a lot of new opportunities, so that's going to be a big focus in the upcoming year as well. So I'm not sure if that helps or not, but those are some of the kind of newer items that are going to be on our radar, and we've got to kind of reshift our focus a little bit to tackle those.
No, I appreciate that, Andy. I mean, 2 quick points there. Housing needs for our senior population and greenhouse gas, how to ultimately knowing what that's going to mean, and then how to work with it. So those, I think you're right. Those are 2 huge issues that we'll be working with in 2022. All right. Any other comments from any of the members of the board at this point?
Yes, this is Council Member Hunjum, or Board Member Hunjum, whatever. I do have a question about, it's toward the very end of this regarding the grant writing and unmet program needs. Andy, could you speak a little bit to, certainly we don't have a dedicated grant writer limiting our ability to expand services. Are we ready to expand services? What is our readiness, and how do you imagine that happening going forward?
Very good question. And I forgot that was in here. You picked out that one kind of tougher nugget. I think that we still have to get our arms around. Our grant writing capacity is limited going after new discretionary grants. We're going to stick with what the board has approved as far as our budget and what you're hopefully going to approve as far as our work plan. The conversation we had on Friday at the workshop was, let's talk with our local jurisdictions around grant writing capacity and see if there's possibly a way to get a shared resource together. It wouldn't just help us as an organization, but helps our region and helps our smaller jurisdictions, especially if they're going to go after grants for things like water plant upgrades or a whole variety of other needs that they may have out there. So I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but I'm in the process actually of scheduling our first meeting of our city, town, and county managers for early January to start diving into that. I think that's a really big deal. So more to come on how we might approach that.
Yeah, I'd love to have that conversation a little more offline with you, Andy. There's a couple of thoughts I have about other, at least within the city of Colorado Springs, not speaking beyond that, where there might be some shared connectivity on something like that. Thanks.
Super. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions?
Not a question as much as I guess that's a question. 2 areas in here that concern me in terms of the amount of bandwidth or the amount of attention we are required to put in, and that is the air quality, ozone strategies to protect ourselves from external environmental effects that seem, at least from what I've heard you say in the past, is going to cause us limitations because of things that are outside of our state. And the other one is this whole greenhouse gas rulemaking compliance. How much influence do we really, I mean, by spending our time and attention in these 2 areas, how much influence and impact are we realistically having, or are we simply reacting to things coming at us?
Another great observation and question. For ozone, we're the designated lead air quality planning agency for the region. And there's 6 regulated pollutants at the federal level, and ozone is one of them. And that's the one that's the biggest pollutant of concern, because we're right on the edge right now. The numbers that we've seen, there are actual monitors that collect data on this. The numbers that we've seen this past summer and in the summer in 2020, 2020, there's enough there to warrant us getting pushed into non-attainment with EPA, if you will. So my concern around that whole process is making sure we've got enough bandwidth. We don't need to overstaff this area, but we currently don't have a dedicated staff person, except for Jessica and I really working on ozone and air quality related issues around that. So if we're going to end up in non-attainment, we're going to need to show as a region a commitment toward trying to figure out ways to kind of bring us back into attainment. And there's some crossover between what some of those strategies might be and what we've been talking about as far as greenhouse gas emissions, things like a travel reduction program that we work with our major employers on a voluntary basis. It would not be a mandatory requirement, but if we developed a voluntary trip reduction program where we encourage employees going to major employment sites to work from home one day a week, or take transit if you can, or do carpools, van pools, things like that can move the needle a little bit on things like ozone, and also would help us on the greenhouse gas emission side. So there's strategies like that where I really do need a dedicated person, at least a partial person that's going to focus on these things and help us develop those strategies and build support across the community and so forth. It would be a big deal if we end up in non-attainment with EPA. It's not going to happen overnight. Like I mentioned, the past 2 summers have been horrible, and I think the feeling is that that's going to be a continuing trend, and not just from pollutants coming in from outside of Colorado or outside of our region. It's stuff that we're generating as well within the region. It comes from transportation emissions. It comes from the energy sector and a bunch of others. So we need to figure out how we're going to take some ownership of it and come up with reasonable strategies that we think would work to help drive down our numbers. Ideally, we could do that on a voluntary basis before we end up in non-attainment. I think if we show a commitment like that, that actually would help, working with the state and with EPA to show that we're doing what we can. We're maybe right on the edge, but don't ding us with non-attainment. Give us some time to try to figure out if we can stay within the federal limits. So it's a big responsibility. We've got a number of, like I said, a couple of staff working on it in tangents here and there, but I'd like to have somebody that's really more focused on it and can work with our local air quality technical committee to try to keep us in compliance. If that
And this
helps.
is, Commissioner Stana, I'll just make a point as well. PPACG will not be doing this in a vacuum. I mean, all of our members have our own public agencies that we belong to, and we'll all be trying to figure out how to address this. And we'll do that in our own way and at our own scale. And we do have different scales considering the different sizes of our public agencies. But I think the key to this is a cooperative effort. PPACG, it'd be impossible for PPACG to do this alone. We're going to have to do this all together. And I think there's some basic things that we can always fall back on, stuff that we feel very strongly about on this board, like unfunded mandates, somebody telling us we've got to do something, and where is that money going to come from? And then also ensuring that we retain local control over these things. So to Andy's point, to address these, whether we like what is going on or not, and I certainly have expressed some of my reservations about it. I personally don't have a problem with asking for voluntary help from our industries and from our citizens, and the key word there is voluntary. So producing a program that provides a pathway for what voluntary could look like sounds like a pretty reasonable thing to me. But the main point I'd like to make is PPACG can't do this alone. This is going to be all of us trying to figure this out together. Are there any other questions with regard to the work program? And by the way, I appreciate deeply the questions asked so far. They're excellent. And it is important, since we're setting our programming for next year, it's important we have this conversation. So good on you all for the questions. Any more questions? All right, hearing none, we do have a vote to approve this and entertain a motion for this item from anybody.
Commissioner Williams, so moved.
I'll second. Nancy Hingham.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any last comments or questions on this item? Hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed with a vote. All those in favor say, just keep in mind, change the word station to base, but that doesn't need to be added to the motion. All those in favor say aye,
Hey,
and any opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you for the great work, team. Let us move on to our next item, item 5D, which is 22 legislative themes and priorities.
Good morning again, Jessica McMullen, your Policy and Communications Manager. So for the legislative themes, during the legislative session, PPACG's Legislative Committee tracks legislation that might impact our programs and members. You'll notice a lot of what we just talked about in the work program actually will have connections here in our legislative themes. These themes are what the committee uses to guide what we take positions on. These themes are how we talk with our lobbyists and talk with our state legislators and sometimes talk with our federal delegation about here are PPACG's priorities. The committee begins meeting in October to begin discussions. We looked at last year's themes, we looked at the prior year themes, we look at how things changed or grown in the community, and they created draft. You all saw that draft in November. And then the committee met again on November 22nd to review any comments we received, any thoughts, anything else that came into someone's mind during that time period. Again, they discussed the expectations for the upcoming legislative session and really tried to map out what we expect to see. At this point, the themes are reviewed and then approved on by the board before being handed out to our local delegation. We actually make a trifold that our legislative committee, our board members and our staff members all hand out to legislators when we run into them so that we can say, hey, did you know what we care about? Hey, do you know what we care about? So that people are always aware and so that everyone can have a quick reference for what are those priorities if you're talking to someone. Does anyone have any questions? I don't think you'll all want me to go straight through all of those themes. But as part of this, one of the things that I do want to bring up is there are going to be 3 major focuses we're expecting to see from the Legislative Committee this year. One of that is senior affordable housing. We talked about that in the work program discussion. And the way we're expecting to engage on that is the senior homestead property tax exemption. We're expecting to see some bills proposed that are going to impact that, possibly expand it, possibly reduce it. So we're going to be engaged on that topic. Another one is wildfire mitigation funding. We're expecting to engage fairly closely on encouraging the state to create that SLAP fund and, other things that can be used for wildfire mitigation as we're looking at different things. And the third one we're expecting to engage on is as greenhouse gas emission rules and regulations are put into place, we're going to be encouraging funding for those rules and regulations so that we can do them without ending up holding an empty pocketbook and not being able to do the rest of our goals and roles. So those are really the 3 priorities we're anticipating seeing. In addition to these themes and priorities that I just went over, just as a quick update, we did lose our state lobbyist that we've had for the last few years. The wonderful Lauren Furman is now going to be the CEO of the Colorado Chamber of Commerce, and as such is no longer going to be able to be our lobbyist. So we're currently reviewing RFPs for a new lobbyist at the state level who'll be serving us as our connection there and providing updates to the board in coordination with us.
Great. Thank you very much. I've reviewed the list and I appreciate the list. I think it's an excellent list for myself. And the overarching themes I think are proper as well. But would want to open it up for the board if anybody has any comments on any of those line items for our legislative themes. All right.
This is
Yolanda has her hand up.
Yes, thank you, Councilwoman Avila. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a comment that when I first got onto PPACG and we were voting on legislative items that we were going to oppose or support or monitor, it had to be unanimous. And I think it was just last year that it became majority. And so I just wanted to apprise everybody of that. And I think it's really, really important that we stay in our lane of our seniors, of transportation, and of the environment, because we were voting on what was perceived to be unfunded mandates, such as police reform. And I just didn't see where PPACG fit into that voting on a legislative matter on police reform. And then the argument brought forward was, well, it's unfunded mandates. So I think we have to be really careful and stay in our lane. And those are my comments.
Thank you for those comments. I appreciate that. Are there other comments?
Councilmember Zuluaga.
Yes, please proceed.
I will probably be contrary in my point of view, but I don't know that it's a goal that I would have to support pandemic recovery through assistance, support, and testing of older adults. I think more for me, pandemic recovery would be education of preventative health measures of, I've seen too much statistics that the testing is actually erroneous. So for us to be spending time and encouragement to help people continue to live in fear and angst is not very supportive to our elderly. So I would like to see that priority change somewhat to be encouraging our adults to take preventative steps. And preventative is not necessarily what the dialogue has been given to us. It's not necessarily masks. It's not necessarily getting tested. It's more in terms of vitamin and nutrition, exercise, health, and things that are other than we are being currently advocated. So that's my contrary point of view, but I don't really support what this line item as a priority.
Thank you, Mr. Zulaga. This is to make sure it's clear that you're referring to the first bullet under the senior section for legislative themes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. If I might just have a quick dialogue with you, would you consider the line to be acceptable if we were to just remove the word testing and just say support pandemic recovery through assistance and support to our senior clients or something to that effect?
Maybe something like preventative education or something rather than testing.
Very good. If
yeah.
I could ask you to offer the words, please, that would be great. And then we can have a conversation about those words. If you need a minute or two to make those words, that'd be great. We can either do that in the committee here, or you can spend a minute and write them up and then present them.
Yeah, this is Dick Elsner. May I suggest that we just add the word education, and then we can take the testing out? Because I really think there are so many different opinions on a lot of this, that if people would just do their own education and make their own decisions, I think that's where we need to go. So if we have education, and then if they want assistance and support and assistance, then that would be where I would go, and just take the word testing out.
Well, I'm partially okay with that, but for me, the assumption of education is the current dialogue. Well, the current dialogue is wear a mask, get tested, get COVID vaccinations. And that's the dialogue of education that is currently acceptable. And I'm saying I don't support that because it really doesn't work from my study and my perspective. So to say just education doesn't really address the area that I'm really looking at, preventative. And maybe preventative education would be okay if that was something like that.
Preventative education would be good for me.
Okay, I'm good with that.
All right. So, Mr. Zulaga, if I could maybe reiterate what I believe you might be proposing here: support pandemic recovery through assistance, support, and preventative education for older adults. Does that fit?
That can work. Yeah, sure. That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So just hold that in mind for a moment while I continue to ask questions from the other board members on any of the other points. All right.
This is This is Councilmember Henjum.
Yes, please.
Under the point of protect and enhance transportation throughout the region, no changes in language whatsoever. Wait, is it in transportation? Sorry, no, support air and water quality. I just want to highlight and recognize that there's I think a healthy tension between bullet points 1 and 2, supporting legislation that protects the air and water quality of the Pikes Peak region, as well as opposing creation of undue regulatory burdens on small communities. I think both are important, and we've had some of those conversations here around this in this board, and appreciate those conversations. I think I just want to highlight that we are managing a tension of both supporting and wanting to encourage air and water quality while not going to the extreme that it creates an undue burden. So just highlighting that, and no recommendations for changing that, just noting that. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. Other comments or questions? All right, hearing none. Mr. Zulaga, you have some proposed word changes. Would you like to make a motion? We have a process going forward here. We do need to vote on this. So we need a motion for either to approve this with your word changes, or you can just offer a motion for your word changes, and then we'll go to a second motion later.
So first, I'll then make a motion for word changes under the title of Protected and Enhanced Services for Seniors in the Region to read, support pandemic recovery through assistance, support, and preventative education for older adults.
All right. And are you making a motion just to make those word changes, or a motion to approve it with those word changes?
I'll make a motion to approve it with those word changes.
All right, very good. Is there a second?
And this is Councilman Donaldson. I'll second that.
Okay, very good. Ladies and gentlemen, one last opportunity for comments or questions on any of the other lines for legislative themes. All right, hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. All those in favor with the current motion and second, please signify by saying aye.
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 And are there any opposed? All right, hearing none, I think we have our approved work program for 2022. Good job, everybody. I'm sorry, our approved legislative themes and priorities for 2022. And let's move on to 5E, slate of officers for executive committee memberships in 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll kick it off, and I'm going to hand it over to Mayor Graham to kind of flesh out the details. This is a continuation of the discussion around potential officers for the board for 2022. You're not going to vote on officers today. I think your only action is to accept the slate of nominees that are being put forward. Then you'll actually vote on the slate at your annual meeting, the meeting in January. So with that, Mayor Graham.
Great. Thank you, Andy. First off, I'd like to thank the other members of the nominating committee, city council members, Yolanda Avila and Dave Donaldson. We did come up with a slate that I think you'll accuse us of watching the movie Groundhog's Day, because it looks very similar to what we already have. Our proposal is chair would be Stan Vanderwolf, first vice chair Sharon Thompson, second vice chair Nancy Henjum, secretary Dick Elsner, and treasurer Don Wilson. And that looks very much like what we have currently, with the exception of the second vice chair position, which is currently held by Yolanda. Everyone was certainly agreeable in wanting to serve in the capacity. They seem to be very pleased with their service and interactions with the staff. We think this is a good and effective group that provides continuity with staff and with our existing programs. I'd also like to acknowledge that Commissioner Holly Williams had thrown her hat in the ring, being graciously willing to accept any position other than the chair when she found out that we had a sufficient number of individuals, and given her anticipated activities next year with the re-election activities and PPRTA support, she felt that this would be an acceptable presentation for the board. Any questions?
This is Commissioner Williams, so thank you very much for that, Mayor Graham. And I think that Commissioner Stone might be knocking on the door for the Zoom room. Oh, he's in again. Thanks.
All right, great. So Commissioner Stone, just to confirm, he is back in?
I am here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good, thank you. And so in the process of accepting this, I presume, Andy, help me out here, since the formal vote is next month, the acceptance of this at this time, does that require a vote, or we just seeing if there's anybody with a recommendation for an alternative?
Good question, Mr. Chair. We have in here the suggested motion to accept the proposed slate of officers. It's been a little weird to me why you have to vote to accept that, but that's the way we've always done it. And we haven't proposed changing that yet. So I think the board probably should vote to accept that slate to officially recognize the work of the nominating committee, and then also perhaps ask if there are others that also want to be considered for a position.
Okay, very good. So at this point then, opening up the floor for any comments or questions or other board member considerations.
This is Commissioner Williams. I move that we accept the nominating committee report for voting in January.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
This is Tamara Estes. I second that.
All right, thank you. And again, a continued opportunity for any board member if you have any questions, concerns, or comments. All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? And hearing none, that passes unanimously for a final vote in January. Thank you, everybody. And let us move on. That actually completes all of our action items that require a vote. We move on now to our reports. And we're starting off, as always, with our military installation reports. And Andy, I don't see who's online. So if you could help me out with anybody that's available to give an installation report.
Sure. Saw Mr. Chuck Arnold earlier. Not sure if he's still online. We do have Ioka Paik from Peterson online as well. Those are the only two military reps that I've seen this morning.
All right, how about we start with Peterson Air Force? Sorry, it's Peterson Space Force Base.
Hello, Ioka Paik. Yeah, we changed our name a few months ago, just in case anybody was wondering. Nothing to report from Peterson. I expected our PA person to be on, but she's not, so I don't have anything else.
Okay, thank you very much. I do know that we have in our work plan to work with Peterson regarding planning for the North Gate. So I think that's a great thing to have on our work plan. And I'm obviously presuming Peterson has an interest in doing a substantial amount of work on that next year as well.
We are very excited for those changes. Unfortunately, you guys probably have a little bit more flexibility in how fast you can go versus how fast we can go. But we have it. We're doing whatever we can to keep it going for our side of the line.
Great. Thank you very much. And are there any questions for Aona? All right, very good. Let's, Andy, did you say there was somebody from, I didn't catch it, was from Fort Carson that you thought was here earlier?
No, I think he's with the Peterson Schriever Garrison as well, but I don't see him online at the moment. Chuck Arnold. Maybe a last call for Chuck.
All right, he must have stepped away, as you mentioned, and you don't think we have anybody else from any of the other installations?
I don't see anybody from the Academy nor from Fort Carson.
Okay, great. I'll just make one quick comment on this. I know it's military installation reports, but recently several of the commissioners did an immersion tour at the Air Force Academy. That was really amazing. I mean, there were fun parts of it. where we actually got to take a flight in one of their student training aircraft, but we also got to see the work taking place at the chapel, and that was really incredible. And then of particular interest for me was the tour that we took of the creek, and we had a long conversation looking at the actual creek itself while we were talking about some of the erosion challenges that are taking place there. And that was very helpful for me to help better understand what some of the challenges are with regard to erosion on the academy grounds. So that was pretty awesome. So I'll just make that point, and I'm appreciative to the academy for offering that tour, and it was helpful for me to learn a lot about what some of the environmental challenges are that they have, and some of the other topics that we had. Also, an opportunity to meet the new 10th Air Base Wing commander. All right, thank you for that. I see item 6B through 6F. Our minutes are included. And let's go to the CDOT monthly update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. Just a few things I want to mention before I turn it over to Shane Ferguson to give a project update. First, I think everybody's well aware that our Transportation Commission has been heavily engaged in greenhouse gas rulemaking process. The final public hearing was held earlier this month. They're still actively looking at those comments and making revisions in anticipation of adopting the final rule at their December meeting coming up next week. So that is making some progress. I encourage you to sit in the formal meeting that I believe is happening next week, the formal commission meeting where that adoption will likely take place. Another topic I just wanted to bring up to everybody's attention is our 10-year plan update. I think everybody's well aware as well that we've made great progress throughout CDOT and particularly in Region 2 in terms of working through the initial 4 years of our plan. In fact, in the Pikes Peak region, we've actually committed funding to all of those projects. And so they've either been constructed, actively under construction, or under design as we speak in anticipation of going to construction. So, we're kind of in the process of, looking at what's next. Initially, I think we had communicated with you that, we were going to be developing, an update. What are the next 4 years of projects based upon projections of revenue that, we were going to see out of Senate Bill 260 as well as a potential federal bill. We actually now have a federal bill. And so the money is actually now real. So instead of trying to work off of projections, we are currently working to analyze that bill and better understand exactly how much money that really means for CDOT and over the long term of that bill. So we've decided to take a step back in terms of schedule. We were initially planning to try to adopt a revised plan with our Transportation Commission in the March timeframe. Given that we have that new bill and we're still digesting it and trying to understand, what is the equity formula, how much funding, first of all, is coming to Colorado, and then what is the equity formula to distribute that within Colorado, and engaging those conversations with staff. We have slowed down that schedule in anticipation of maybe adopting a plan, hopefully late spring, early summer timeframe now. So, we were initially going to be looking at having a conversation with staff about the distribution throughout the state. We have slowed that process down as well. And so that conversation likely won't happen until the January timeframe before we even have, the totals that Region 2 will be looking at going forward. So there's going to be a lot more work to take place on that. Again, it's not only bringing in whether the next 4 years of projects, but also continuing that and extending it out to a full 10-year plan again. So we look forward to working, with your TAC and with the board on making decisions with regard to those projects. And then finally, I just wanted to offer a reminder. I think most folks are aware, we have a fairly large project that is under design and is going to be advertised for construction on Highway 115 early next year. We had been talking about having an open house in December. And due to some scheduling conflicts with some elected officials who had a strong desire to participate, we have actually rescheduled that to January 5th, starting late afternoon that day at our office in Colorado Springs. So I just want to remind folks that is an upcoming public meeting open house format that we're going to be hosting just after the start of the year. So with that, unless there's any questions, I'll turn it over to Shane Ferguson, our North Program Engineer.
Before Shane speaks, I just want to express my appreciation for your willingness to move that open house for the 115 project to January. That's very helpful for many of us, and just wanted to say thanks.
All right, thank you, Rich. Mr. Chair, Board, good morning. Shane Ferguson with CDOT. So Rich already talked about the 115 project. I'll go ahead and talk about another project on Park County State Highway 9 and US 285. We had an open house on November 18th. We had a great turnout, around 50 folks. Again, it was kind of an open house format where people would walk through. We had stations set up and we would discuss it with individuals, the project, the layout, the plan, the schedule, et cetera. And so great turnout, great communication, great feedback from the folks that turned in there. Next is the Wilkerson Pass project on US 24. Just to give you guys a heads up, that drive through that area. That project will be wrapping up here within the next week to 2 weeks. Guardrails in place, we're doing a little bit of grinding tomorrow actually, and then final striping with erosion control. That'll go through a little bit wintertime, but the nuts and bolts of the project is complete. Another update for the Colorado or Powers Boulevard and Research Project. It's progressing well. So far, the comments I've gotten, at least on the travelers through Powers corridor itself, the lights and the signalization seems to be maneuvering well. We are maintaining that pedestrian movement action from east to west. I know it's still challenging for the folks that live on the east side to get to the west side. That will be done. I believe we've got roughly 45 more days of that schedule in place. And then finally, the MAMSIP project, the I-25 piece on the south of Colorado Springs. You should be seeing some temporary pavement going down just to get through the wintertime, as well as concrete barrier going up, developing our detour and getting that ready for a little bit more heavy construction come late winter, early spring. The Colorado 94 project, we are anticipating notice to proceed probably within the next week to 2 weeks, and that project will be underway fairly soon. Charter Oaks Ranch Road, we should start seeing activity here within the next few weeks on that project as well. And that wraps up the MANSIP update. Any questions for me at this time?
Hi, Shane. This is Nancy Henjum from Colorado Springs City Council. This is a really super detailed question and not really a board related question, but it's about the Wilkerson Pass project.
Sure.
And I'm asking you in part because it's so close to the road. Just most recently when I was going west on Wilkerson Pass, as you get to the top, there is a beautiful tree. Well, it was a beautiful tree. It's now very dead. That's right next to the roadway. And does CDOT take care of that? That tree really probably needs to be removed. But just curious. Yeah.
Yeah. If it's within our project limits, I'll have to probably send our environmental folks out there to ensure that that tree is dead and not dormant. Also, I'll take a look and see if it's within our clear roadway area. And if it is, or clear zone area, we can probably address it within the project limits. But let me have my staff take a look at it.
Yeah,
You said it's
thank
at
you.
the top of the pass.
You can't miss it. I mean, as you're driving west and you kind of see the rest stop area to the building to the left, and that tree is really, as I recall, kind of right on the shoulder of the road, or it looks like it is anyway. And it was a big tree. It looks very dead to me. Really stuck out. Yeah, thanks.
So is that tree on the north side of the highway or on the south side of the highway?
I don't know, north, south. As you're heading
on
west,
the
it's
right or
on
the
the
left?
opposite side.
Okay.
Well, if you're driving west, it's on the left side of the road.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, we'll take a look at that. If it's behind the guardrail or too far away, maybe on the forest property that we cannot touch. So that may be one point, but I'll definitely have our environmental staff and see if they can get out, take a look at it, as well as our team, just to see where it is in conjunction with the roadway.
Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions for me or CDOT update?
Any questions for CDOT? I do have one myself, but just ask around first. All right, hearing none. Hey, Shane and Robert, what the county is working with our delegation to try to increase the flexibility for ARPA so that it can be used for infrastructure. And I was just wondering if CDOT would be supportive of that or would like to have a conversation with us about it, and whether or not you might be interested in also engaging in that, with your lobbyist, if you have one at the federal level.
Sorry, I was trying to get myself unmuted. Yeah, I think we'll be interested in engaging in a conversation. I would have to, if we're going to do something from a lobbying perspective on a statewide basis, I don't have necessarily authority to make those kinds of decisions, but I'd be interested in hearing what you folks are proposing from El Paso County and any other jurisdictions. And then, I can definitely carry the message forward and check the temperature on that.
That'd be great. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a call later. I could talk about some of the details right now, but that isn't really consistent with the theme of the agenda right now. So I'll just give you a call later and tell you what I believe is happening so far, and then see if there's further interest or not. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, very good. Any other questions for Richard or Shane? All right, hearing none, let's go to the stack update.
Yeah, thank
Okay,
you, Mr.
this
Chair. I
is,
think we're gonna hit this with three of us.
yeah,
All right.
go ahead, Commissioner Stone.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just gonna hit a couple highlights and then I'll leave it open for Holly and also for John to fill in any gaps. The stack meeting last month, that was held virtually because of the governor's recommendation that all of their meetings be held virtually with CDOT. They, of course, we're talking a lot about the greenhouse gas bill, which we've been kept apprised by our own staff, so I won't go into the details on that. But we did get a report from the Transportation Commission that we're talking about a new program potentially to allow sponsorship of rest areas to generate some non-tax revenues to supplement their maintenance operations, et cetera. I thought that was a good idea. They also had a discussion about Front Range Rail and funding that's going to be needed to get that started. They talked about the possibility of doing that, I believe, through some form of loan, although I don't know what the source of that loan might be. John or Holly might be able to fill in on that. For the legislative session upcoming with CDOT, the things that they talked about specifically that are of interest possibly to PPACG was interestingly enough that they were going to wade into affordable housing on state lands, which I'm not really sure how that all fits in, and with that under SB 21260. But they also talked about applying for a capital grant development committee grant for airport aviation, weather towers, et cetera, which might be of interest to Colorado Springs. Outside of that, they also talked about the upcoming budget, talked about how HUTF funds projected to fall to a little bit below pre-pandemic levels. Then additionally, of course, the big topic was the infrastructure bill, which they're going to be letting people know about grants as those come forward. But there was a lot of excitement, obviously, about updating that 10-year plan quickly as possible and being able to make new funds available under the new infrastructure plan. With that, I'll turn it over to Holly, John, and of course, Dick, since you were on that as well. Any additional that you'd like to add in would be certainly welcome.
Yes, and so I was unable to attend, but in looking at the minutes here, I found it interesting that the Transportation Commission does want to do a loan for the Front Range Rail, and then there was a good discussion point in here that they will be sending out the various different grant opportunities for the new federal infrastructure bill to stacked members. That would include also Andy and John. So that'll be helpful to us as we see a lot of different pots of money coming down that we'll want to start working together to apply for these different grant funds that are coming down through the federal funds. And Dick, did you want to present anything as well?
No, I was just going to say, I think this month's meeting was canceled. So we won't be having one this month because I think CDOT is in the midst of trying to figure out all of the money and come up with their new schedule.
And I can find out what days the Transportation Commission is hearing the greenhouse gas rule, if anyone wants to listen into that. We did have, and thank you to John Leosados and Herman Stockinger, and a commissioner out of Adams County. We had them present at Colorado counties, and we had some really interesting information on the greenhouse gas rule, and something like 2,000 pages of comments. If anyone has the time to read that, I think that, you know, that would be good bedtime reading, to go through all those comments in preparation for next week's meeting.
So, Chair, if I may, you know, the Transportation Commission meeting, the workshops are actually next Wednesday afternoon. And then the formal meeting is on Thursday morning. And so everything is on CDOT's website in terms of the schedule, when they're going to be talking about various topics. So Wednesday afternoon will be the workshop where they talk about the greenhouse gas rule, and then likely Thursday morning where they take the formal vote.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Rich. So that would be the report, unless John has anything. John, you know, this is your time. We've got some time for you to actually get up and say some stuff if you want. I know that we very rarely ask you to say anything in our meetings. This is for John Leosados.
Thanks, Commissioner. Actually, I think you guys covered it, and we've been trying to actually shorten the meetings. So Andy's got 2 hand signals. Wrap it up, go faster, or we'll put you on the rack if you keep talking. So I don't need to take any time unless anyone has a question.
All
Thank
right.
you, John.
That's our report then.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate the stack update. Let's move on now to the ED's report. Andy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just 3 items real briefly, and you're going to hear much more from John in the new year. What the first item I was going to mention is we're scheduling an infrastructure workshop around the federal infrastructure bill. It'll be scheduled for Monday, January 24th. And we're going to set up the session with our good partners from the National Association of Regional Councils again, Eric Zimmerman, whom you may have met before. We'll push out a save the date. We'll do that here in the coming day or two, so you can get it on your calendars. But there's so much to unpack in that federal bill that's going to be out there and fund big infrastructure projects, not just transportation, but water, wastewater, broadband, and other initiatives for at least the next 5-year period. So really trying to dive in to see what's available and make sure our jurisdictions are getting aligned with what they think they really need to go after. So more to come on that, but it'll be Monday, January 24th in the morning. Second item real quick is the State Air Quality Control Commission has a couple of vacancies on it. And I think we've sent a notice out and we can send that out again. But if you know of anybody that might be interested in applying to sit on the AQCC at the state level, you know, now's a really good opportunity. We have no representation from our region on the AQCC. It's actually not required that it be geographically balanced. They look instead for a balance based on background and experience and so forth. But it sure would be nice to have somebody from our community, our region, to get appointed. It's a governor appointment position, then it has to get confirmed by the Senate. So do the calculus and just figure out, you know, who might be a good candidate, and let's shake the trees and see if we can get somebody to apply from our region. But if you have any questions or suggestions around that, feel free to let me know.
And
Yeah, Dave.
Andy, this is Councilman Dave Donaldson. Are there technical requirements for that position? Do they need to be knowledgeable in air quality and legislation, or are they looking for a citizen? What are they looking for?
I don't think there are technical requirements. I was looking at the notice yesterday, and it doesn't identify any technical needs to be able to be appointed, but it's an opportunity, they say, to be a decision maker regarding Colorado's air quality control policy, including those related to climate change and public health. So I'm sure if somebody has a public health background and wants to emphasize that would probably help quite a bit. I think if you have transportation experience, that might be duly considered as well. Okay, good. Okay, super. And last item I've got is want to thank the board for your time and participation at our workshop retreat last Friday. We got a ton out of it, really got some fantastic feedback. So really appreciate your time and participation there. We're working up kind of a to-do list and follow up next steps list of things we talked about, and we'll get that out to the board here in the coming weeks. But it was time, I think, time very well spent. It was past due, so I'm glad we got with a lot of new members, our members that have been part of the board for a while, all together to give us some really good direction on things coming up, not just next year, but in the next couple of years. So just wanted to thank you for that. So more to come. But happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and we will see you in the new year. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for Andy on any of those topics?
Mr. Chair, this is Councilman Donaldson.
Please.
This isn't a question for Andy, so I'll hold it until after any questions for Andy. But I do have a question about something that was in the notes from the Commission on Aging meeting.
Okay. You want to cover that when we go around the horn for member entity announcements then?
That's fine.
Okay, great. All right. Any other questions for Andy on the ED's report? Very good. Let's go around the horn for member entity announcements. And Dave, since you've got something on your mind there, why don't you go ahead and start off?
Okay, and my question was just going to be if there's anyone from that was at that meeting who could comment on what's on page 75, and it talks about a family support caregiver staff, Jennifer Horn, who introduced a Mr. John Lichtenberger, who's the son of an older woman who had her home that she owned outright sold through her HOA sheriff sale. And I was hoping someone could give a little more information about that. I've never heard of a HOA sheriff sale. And it sounds like this elderly woman had her home sold out from under her without her knowledge, it sounds like. So is there anyone who can comment on that?
Unfortunately, I don't see anybody online.
I can comment on that. Can you tell me, this was a public trustee foreclosure? Or was it a
Well,
sheriff's foreclosure?
what it says is it was sold through her HOA, I'm assuming homeowners association sheriff sale.
Okay, so there's very strict requirements in those that all, there's multiple notices going out to the homeowner. And so I wouldn't understand exactly how she could not be aware. That would be something, if you wanted to give her my phone number, I can certainly talk to her, or we can have someone reach out to her. The homeowner gets multiple notices from the mortgage company first, and even the HOA. And then when they apply for the sale of the property, there's still even more notices that are going to the homeowner, and they go to all addresses on file for the owner.
And Holly, I don't have any information. That's why I was kind of bringing it up to get some, but perhaps Andy can put someone in touch with you.
Yeah, we
regarding
can
that.
address it with them. But that's kind of the way how the cells work.
Okay. And then one other thing in the notes from the Commission on Aging, it says that news on the homestead exemption tax is that the CCA does not feel the bill will pass as written due to the impact it will have on the state budget. And again, I would just like someone to fill me in on that. Does that impact our county senior exemption? I don't think so. But more detail would be good on that for me.
Well, I can talk a little bit about the senior exemption. I don't know about this specific bill, but as part of the tax committee, they're looking at senior exemption. The money,
is that synonymous with homestead exemption? What you're
yes,
talking about here?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And the money comes from the state. It's a state backfill, so it has no impact locally. If seniors claim it, it's reimbursed by the state. The conversations going on right now is they want to figure out a way to means test it, which is interesting because it's in the Constitution that it has to apply to everybody or nobody. They don't have to fund it. They can fund it. When there's a Tabor surplus, that's one way they can they can use that to cut the table surplus down. Means testing, I'm not too sure if they can ever come up with that one because they say, well, we want to attach it to income. So you do your income tax and then you can get a credit. Well, a lot of seniors on Social Security don't even bother to file an income tax because they don't have to. And so it is open. One of the other pieces of legislation they wanted to do was put a CPI on it. That number came out when they first passed the bill a long time ago, and it hasn't been adjusted upward since. So they want to try to figure out if they can have it some type of an escalator on it as cost of living goes up, then that exemption would go up. Right now, the task force on the tax policy, I'm going to get good at saying that soon. We started looking at it, and then the senators that we were working with kind of said, oh, let's put it off a little bit. So then that's why we kind of pivoted off of that. More information than you want, right?
Well, that's good information, Dick. If it doesn't pass, like this says, is that going to impact seniors in El Paso County?
No.
Thank you.
All right. Dick, I thought maybe if it doesn't pass, then we just have what we have, which I think is not optimal. And
well,
hopeful that we get to something better.
If it doesn't pass, you're tied to what's in the Constitution and what the Joint Budget Committee and Appropriations decide that they have available to give that. I believe your next year's tax bill, I believe, you get your bill of 2022 covers 2021. I believe 2021 is fully funded. So this one would be covered. And then it's a case of what are they going to do next year? And what you have now isn't that bad. You do get quite a little bit of chunk off of it. But again, the legislature giveth and the legislature taketh away, and you never know from year to year what they're going to do.
Yeah, thank you. All right, appreciate that conversation. Dave, do you have any other comments or updates as we go around the horn here?
No, I would wish everybody a Merry Christmas if we're not going to be back together. And as you drive through Colorado Springs, if it's nighttime, look over at City Hall, and for the first time in years, it's been decorated for the Christmas season with lights. So it's a nice, beautiful setting this year.
Great, thank you. And I'll have an announcement for myself, but I'll wait until the end. Anybody else going around the horn here? Any other comments from any of our members?
Yolanda Avila, I just want to say happy holidays to all, and may be peaceful and joyful and relaxing.
Great comment, and the same to you. Other comments?
Councilmember Henjum, just in the vein of driving smart and carefully, just really aware of what at least appears to be increased accidents, driving under the influence of any variety of substances, speeding, racing, accidents left and right. It's a real problem. And I hope that as we are traveling here and there in the holidays, that we will all ourselves be really mindful of our own driving patterns and actions, and encourage those that we love to do the same. Thanks, and happy holidays to all.
Great, thank you. Any other comments?
This is Robert Zuluaga, Woodland Park. Just want to say I really appreciated the input from all of you this year. As a newbie on the board, I really feel I'm ending the year with a lot more understanding of what I'm involved in. So thank you very much, and Merry Christmas. And I look forward to working with you in the new year.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Good holiday comments?
This is Commissioner Williams.
Yes, please.
Let's see, I do think that the city's lights are very pretty this year. Did want to point out that part of that is done by El Paso County Facilities, shining the digital image. So we were talking about that in the Festival of Lights Parade on Saturday night. The Hanukkah celebration on Sunday night was very enjoyable. We did, as well as some city council members, have that chance to tour the Air Force Academy. Very well worth it. I did, unfortunately, let's see, Paul, the military advisor, crashed his virtual glider and I crashed my virtual plane. And so the federal government is going to have to put out a good, $300,000 to fix all those virtual stuff. That was fun. And the tour of the creek was fascinating as well, to see the mouse habitat. And so also, just a great appreciation to all of our military installations and a Merry Christmas to everybody as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that. Anybody else? All right, hearing none. I'll just close briefly. First, an announcement about myself, but it may be obvious to most of you already. On Monday, I tested positive for COVID, and that is why I am dialed in remotely. That's the proper thing to do. I always feel strongly that if you're able to continue to do the business that you need to do, and I feel that's very important. So I am continuing to work. No need to worry about me. I feel really good. And you heard me talking and speaking today. So, I think I'm still doing what I need to do to serve the citizens of El Paso County. But just wanted everybody to know that. And I will come out of isolation Wednesday next week. And then we'll be able to participate in person with meetings at that time. And just as many others have done, I would like to wish Andy and the PPACG team and staff a great holiday season and Christmas. Thank you for the great work that you're doing. I'd also like to express those wishes to the members of this board, and in particular to the great work that you have all done through the course of this year, dealing sometimes with some pretty tough topics. Thank you so much for all of that work and coming to these meetings and participating and providing input so that PPACG can be even better than it is. So again, my great wishes to all the members, all of the participants, all of those that give our different reports at these meetings. I wish you the best over the holiday season, and we will see you all in January at our next meeting. And quick reminder for that, that will be, if I got this correct, on the 12th, the second Wednesday in January, of course. And that will be when we hold our next meeting. So look forward to seeing you all then. Everybody have a great, great Christmas and a great holiday. Thank you so much. All right.
Bye.
Yep, you're welcome. This meeting now is adjourned, and you all have a great day.